told away. He is Ben Kingsley, and we are the hosts of the Property Couch podcast. And today we are going to talk about the top 3 mistakes that property investors make. We recently did a report. We're going to show you how to get your hands on all 10, but we're going to talk about the top 3 today.
FOMO mistakes, mate. That's right. Because there's plenty of mistakes.
There is.
But there's also plenty of ways in which you can do this properly. So that's what we're here to try and teach.
That's right. And it's a fair topic, isn't it? Because
it's a great topic.
If you have a look at the market at the moment, it's not very often in the history of you and I doing this, Ben, over many, many years where all markets are sort of moving in the same direction at the same time.
That's right.
So there is a lot of FOMO in the marketplace, and we want to help people avoid that. But got one question for you, Ben.
Yes, mate.
Have you fallen for FOMO in your life?
Oh, no doubt. I'm only human. Mm-hmm. So when if I see something that's happening in the marketplace and it's bringing my attention to it because there's a lot of media and you're talking about it with your mates or whatever you're doing, you can ultimately get an awareness. You think, I want to miss out on that. So there's a natural cause. Now, when it comes to property, however, I haven't really fallen for that. I'm always aware of market movements and supply and demand and those type of things, but I've been pretty fortunate that in the sense that I've only ever bought property when I'll just look. You can ultimately.
There we go. That's very helpful for me.
There we go. So what I was saying was, I've always only bought properties when I'm in a position to actually be able to afford it and plan to become what you plan to become. So I haven't been there. I mean, on the share market, because you can take a little smaller position in certain things. Again, I'm only human, so it does become something that you certainly think about.
Very good. So,
what about you?
Oh, yes, I have been. I wish I could say the same story that you have about not being stung in property, but I thought I bought my first property back in 1999.
Yep.
And I thought the whole game was to get your name on a title. That's it.
That's it. Any title.
Just any title.
Any type of property, any location.
Any location, because there wasn't enough mix of technical and experience. It was just the whole idea is to buy properties, hold them for the long term, and you will create freedom rights. So I just thought, well, and as a 22-year-old, like the complexities of buying real estate was so enormous that there was enough to get your head around anyway. So I just thought just to buy.
And back in the day, everyone was talking about, I need, just keep buying as many as you can and you'll win the race. Right?
Correct. So the FOMO that I fell for was just that. Yeah. Just buy whatever it takes, wherever it is to buy. And the first property, I don't own it now. But I've since looked back. It recently sold. It's done about 3.8% compounding growth over the journey. So in the last
just above inflation,
22 years, right? So it wasn't really a winner. But I've said it to you before. I've said it a number of times. I still think it's one of the best decisions I ever made was to buy that dud. Yeah. Because it got me in the game, got me in the mindset, got me moving, got me doing the things that you needed to do.
Can I give you some advice there, mate?
Yes.
You don't need to spend as much.
That's right.
To get your takeaways.
I know. So there you go, folks. We have fallen for FOMO. But the reason we want to do this Facebook Live today is really simple, because we think that the current market, there are opportunities for you to make long-term improvements to your wealth position. So it's not all bad. I mean, if you actually buy the right property with the right strategy in the right location in the current environment that's just so full of FOMO, if you're playing the game with the right mindset and the right game, you'll be fine. But it's the uneducated.
It is
that's where I'm worried for people.
All right, so let's start with the first one, which is you buy because others are buying, right?
Yep.
That's the big one, right? At the moment, because that's where all the media attention is at. You have to be living under a rock somewhere out near Uluru to be able to not understand that property markets are moving pretty heavily at the moment. So with that in mind, it then brings you to an awareness.
Yep.
And as part of that awareness, and what we're trying to help you understand here is that if now is the right time, in other words, yes, interest rates are low, yes, job stability is there, yes, we can afford it both for the short, medium and longer term, then we're in a reasonable position to say, if that's given me a little nudge, terrific. However, if your situation is not stable, you don't know what life's going to bring for you, you're looking to change jobs, you're looking to start a family, all these other things can potentially be a real problem child for you when it comes to rushing in and making a big mistake.
Yeah, I hear you, Ben. So I want to know if anyone's watching this, just let us know in the comments. Have you fallen for FOMO? Have you been susceptible for FOMO? Is FOMO right now giving you anxiety that you should feel like you need to be buying? And also let us know where you're listening to this, which state, or you could be overseas, but which state are you listening to? Because we're interested to find out, because I think it's a perfectly human thing to... It's a mental trigger. It's a human emotion that if there is that fear of missing out, you want to get on board. But we want to know if you've experienced that or it applies to you. But that number one, we've said you only buy because you see others are buying, but that's essentially following the crowd.
Yeah.
So number two, Ben, is this is a big one. The mistake is you underestimate. See if I can spell on cue. Underestimate what it takes to buy in a hot market.
Yeah.
Now, you and I did, this was so important and so powerful that you and I did a 3-part podcast.
Yeah.
We'll put some links in the comments below. But we did 3 weeks teaching people how to make sure they don't fall for this, because let's assume that you're not following the crowd. Let's assume that you've got a strategy in place. Let's assume that finance is pre-approved. Let's assume every other thing you haven't made that mistake. It's still easy to do this one, isn't it?
Well, I think, some of those points you just made is most people act irrationally and move quickly and don't do their fundamental research, but then they stumble into a marketplace and all of a sudden, just turning up and having some weekend hand raising or not basically being in a position to do anything is going to cause one of two things to happen. You're going to pay far too much, right? So if you're silly enough to then say, I'll just keep going and keep riding that, and someone else in the crowd is also silly enough to do that under auction circumstances, well, you're potentially going to pay 2023, 2024 prices for the asset. So we don't want that. But on the counter side, we also want to know what's required when it comes to lining up the ducks to execute on that.
Yeah, because the agents, they're putting sales of 100,000 over reserve. In some cases, 1 million over reserve.
Yes.
So there is some crazy stories out there. But don't get seduced too much by 100 over, 1 million over reserve, because the reserve needs to be appropriately set. So if the reserve isn't appropriately set, there's a whole range of reasons why that might happen. But the point is that there is, like, if you just think about finance, it's taking the banks 15 days to pick up your file just to assess.
Yeah.
You might have had a pre-approval in place, but the goalpost might have moved since you got the pre-approval in place. Or you might be going for an auction, you find a property that ticks all the boxes, it's perfect, and you're going for it this particular weekend. Then all of a sudden the agent rings up and says, someone's made an amazing offer on the Wednesday.
An acceptable offer.
And we're bringing everything forward. And not only is it not happening at auction this Saturday, but it's actually happening tonight in the boardroom. And it's like, what do you mean in the boardroom? What is a boardroom auction?
No, I've got kids basketball training tonight. I don't know whether I can get down there. Well, do you want the property or not?
Yeah.
So, ultimately that's what happens. You've got to, this whole idea of underestimating all of the moving parts, and also the other significant thing here is we're playing with sheep stations. This is a significant value asset, probably one of the biggest assets you're going to buy outside of your family home, right? So investment properties are expensive. So just make sure you do that. And you do need to make sure that you understand all of those parts. So yes, in the comments below, we'll put some links to the podcast, but there's also some other education you can do around getting out there, experiencing the market, understanding that even though a market's moving at the moment, there are going to be other times in the future where the market also continues to move slowly but surely on its way forward.
So folks, who's bought in this FOMO market? Let us know if you've bought something. How was it? Was it really hard? Was it easy? Did you know the agents? Was it sort of deer in the headlights sort of stuff? Let us know in the comments. I've got a few here. Ben Hayden's told us there's no FOMO here in Brisbane. Loof is in Sydney. Hello. We've got Elle in New South Wales.
I reckon Hayden was joking there, talking about no FOMO in Sydney.
Well, he's got in the game long ago, so it's easy to just watch the madness now.
Ah, clever. Well done, Hayden.
And Loof has told us that he or she just settled. Settled yesterday.
Awesome.
Which is pretty good. So, folks, I guess the important thing here is we're not saying that you shouldn't be buying real estate right now. That is not what we're saying, because it's actually we think that it's going to be a return to the Roaring 20s. If you haven't checked out our podcast that we did last week with Bernard Salt, the #1 demographer in the country, you should check that out. We'll put a link in the comments below. But we think that it is a wonderful time to be buying. It's just you've got to make sure you don't make any mistakes. And underestimating how to buy in a hot market is one of those. Now, third one. Anyone want to take a guess? It's probably a little bit too time delayed for us to see in the comments there, Ben. But number 3 is really, really straightforward.
Yeah.
You buy.
I gave a clue about this just before.
Without a plan.
A plan.
Or a long-term strategy.
Yeah. Long-term horizon, people. You don't make a lot of money. I mean, this is a unique time, right? So we are seeing the market move pretty drastically. We think that that'll settle down and we'll get to a more common or consistent performance of values, and there will be potentially some levers that the governments help in terms of managing that so we don't get to a risk. But hey, it is a terrific time to be buying property, especially if you've made sure that your cash flows can allow for it. You're buying within your budget. You're seeing it as part of a building wealthier tomorrow's strategy. We think it's amazing, but you're not going to be wealthy, or that horrible word rich, inside a year or two because you've made this decision. You want to be thinking about the future, planting that tree, Bryce, planting that tree so it builds up and provides over the longer term, because most of us have to do this with debt. And so yes, even though money's cheap, there's still going to be a debt that we want to pay off, and then ultimately living off that passive income over time. We have
a philosophy here on the Property Couch, which is basically when someone asks us the question of when should I buy a property, or when should I buy my next property, it really comes down to when your cash flow allows. So you need to buy the right property, correctly finance it, and go when the cash flow allows. So if you haven't done any of that prep work, because we believe that property investing is a process, not an event.
Yeah.
So if people are treating property investment as an event, which is typical from FOMO, when people are saying, well, I've got to get in, so therefore I've got to go and do this event, which is to actually buy some real estate, that's not okay, because there is 5 steps that you need to go through. Whether you are a first-time investor, whether you've done this for 20 years, there is 5 steps. 1 is clarify. 2 is evaluate.
Can we stop and talk to those 2 points?
Yes.
And then we'll get some more in here whilst you're writing them out.
Go.
Clarify and evaluate is basically like trying to do a diagnostics on the opportunity and potential.
Yep.
So look, if FOMO and the media attention around property is making you think of property, that's not a bad positive that comes out of that, right? We still say there's a lot of work you need to do in here. But if you can clarify and evaluate, effectively what you're talking about is your opportunity and potential. But if you don't really know what that opportunity and potential is, there is this process that you should go through to understand that. And really what we're saying is, well, what does that diagnostics look like? It looks like cash flow. It looks like current and future plans that we've been talking about today. And then it ultimately moves into step 3. Step 3 is plan. So clarify, evaluate. Then you create a plan, which is essentially going, well, this is my flag that I want to get to. This is the result that I'm after. Yep.
So what do I need to actually do to achieve that result? And for a lot of people, that is anywhere between 3 to 5 properties.
Yep.
Right? So, and for some people it's only 3, some 5, and it could be more. But the point is, if you know what the end game is, and for us the end game is really clear. It's how to get to $2,000 a week. Now, not everyone does $2,000 a week, but it's about having an income to fund a lifestyle. So let's just call that $2,000 per week. Well, then we need to actually know what the step-by-step process is that we need to do, and that comes from effective planning. And that planning includes, Ben, not just the idea of buying an investment property, not just the idea of having an investment property, but it comes, if you've got kids, they've got what schools are they going to go to? If you've got significant milestone or bucket list items coming up, all of these things, renovate the kitchen, buy a new car, send the kids to school if that's for you, upgrade your home, downgrade your home, all these things, real life, need to come into place. So if you've actually effectively planned that, then you can move on to this implement stage, which in FOMO, let's be honest, in FOMO, Ben, this is where everyone starts, at the implement stage.
Correct. They jump ahead, they come back, I threw this up here because I thought you might go there, asset selection, borrowing power, cash flow management, and defence.
Yeah.
The principles that we look at. Then you've also got, the decision quadrant that we talk about in terms of all these important elements around asset selection and so forth. They skip all of that. They just jump straight to need a property, and as you did when you first started, just need to put my name on a title.
Yep.
Just need to put my name on a title. Well, you got a 3.25% return or 3.5% return or whatever that looked like. There are better opportunities to get a better result over the long term if you're prepared to spend more time in the planning space than you are in the execution or implementation space.
I'm not going to butcher this quote, Ben, but if I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 5 sharpening the saw. I've butchered that a little bit, but it's effectively saying if you've got an idea to get to an end result, spend most of the time where it actually matters. Because if you get this bit right, this bit here becomes quite straightforward. And importantly, you're not doing U-turns, you're not having to change tack, you're not susceptible to changing breezes. And if you come up, because you will come up against FOMO markets, it's like the FOMO market we're in now is not the first FOMO market we've ever experienced, right?
Correct.
But if you have a plan, and in the plan it's to buy now, well, that's fine, But if you remember what we said at the top of this Facebook Live, ignorance is the enemy here. That is, if you are uneducated, you do not know what it takes to buy an investment property, you do not want to build out an investment strategy, that is where you are the most vulnerable and susceptible to the negative influences of FOMO. But if you are educated, you know what you're doing, you've got a plan in place and there's a strategy that you're walking, then you do not feel that you are going to fall victim to that.
Bryce, there are countless examples where people who have failed to plan ultimately pay a greater price. Mm-hmm. And that greater price can come down to the opportunity cost that they lose. It can come in a time point of view. So using another analogy of building a house, if you start building the rooms and then change your mind, there's a cost from a time point of view, and there's ultimately a cost from a physical cost and also a monetary value that also plays into that. So hence we say spend more of your time getting educated and building that knowledge base, because when you do execute, you have a clear vision. It's not planning on the run. Planning on the run will not help you maximize your outcome.
Well said, Ben. So there you go, folks. It's a process, not an event. It's important that you buy with a plan or a strategy in place. But one of the things that Ben and I have been really passionate about is educating. We've been doing the Property Couch now for 6 years,
wow,
Ben.
6 whole years.
Can you believe it's ticked over to 6 years? We're approaching our 350th episode. And part of that is actually equipping people with as much information as we possibly can. But we do understand that going through our backlog of podcasts over that time, is actually...
We wouldn't force that on all of our worst interviews.
There is scores and scores of hours there, right? So how can we help you avoid FOMO through actually making sure you're not ignorant and you are educated and you understand what to do? So we have our very first online course that we're super proud of. We've made it affordable to the maximum number of people. Excuse me. And what we're doing at the moment is we're taking 40% off the price of that. So I'm going to talk to you about that shortly. But what we're going to do now is just go and show you a few of our students who have actually been through the course, Ben, to get a bit of an idea of what they think about being educated.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's really good. They really explain all of the terms in this course. So you've really, you're armed with the right tools that you need to succeed in your property investment journey. I thought it was very, very valuable.
The true, goal of the course is that it gives you a fundamental understanding of the basics, the true drivers for positive wealth success.
If you were just starting out, I think that would be amazing you definitely get heaps from it.
Definitely do start and build course, 100%. It'll set you on the right track, set you on the right path. It'll open up your mind onto how you really should be doing things.
That moment when your motivation actually seems to die down, or when your goals actually get derailed. The process that Ben and Bryce discussed have helped me in particular to get back and clear up the vision.
I've always seen the big differences between people that have succeeded and not succeeded. And the one thing that I think differentiates the two are people that just try something. You know, the people that don't really succeed are the ones that stop or don't try at all. Just do it. You know, think of Nike. Just do it. That's it. Like.
So there you go, folks. There's just a handful of our students. It's over 1,000 students that have gone through that program now, Ben. But what it does is it explains the framework super simple and super straightforward. So we're going to put a link in the comments below so you can actually see, go and have a look at that. As I said, we've taken 40% off the price of that just for this week only. So go and check that out. But there's been an interesting comment. Rena Adriano. Hi guys, bought our first investment property 3 years ago and the value has dropped. Now we're thinking of buying another property through SMSF. Is this a good or a bad idea? So two parts. It's a good question, but there's a bigger principle at play here.
There is. So I'll just answer the first question. This is a perfect example of, hey Rena, this is what we're talking about planning, about organising. Good or bad idea is just so simple, short, not a lot of thinking about that. Buying a property in an SMSF is completely a huge decision. Lots of complexity around that. You need some sophistication. So I want to park that to the side to sort of say, before you think about that, think about all of the obligations you have about doing that. But we want to come back to the message here about, well, wait a minute, under FOMO, I mean, all the media reports, isn't all the property market moving, Bryce? Isn't everyone winning in property at the moment? Well, then this is an example of someone who isn't. Now, we don't obviously know what she's bought, but it's an indication that not all properties perform at the same level. That's why we really encourage you to be informed, to be educated, to be wiser in terms of making that smarter decision.
Absolutely. So not all properties go up in value. I can testament. I've got two properties. The first two actually didn't go up in value to the extent that I wish they did, but that's a really good question there, Rena. Not all properties are going up, but there is a real critical place for asset selection here. This one is from Tina Sook. Ben, how are we going to go with that one? Sook Semrange. Apologise in advance, Tina. I reckon I butchered that terribly. First home buyer in Sydney. Been educating myself for a while and we are ready, but just demotivating to see the price guide getting higher and higher. $750 guide for a 2-bed, 2-bath, 1-car apartment. 15 Ks from CBD in an investment grade area is harder than expected, but I'm sticking to making sure the stats are good to avoid FOMO and overpaying. I mean, yes, first home buyers have got the toughest gig here because they are frantically saving for a deposit and that cash, and if the price is moving at a much faster rate than you can save, certainly feel for you, Tina, that is not the case. That is not what the situation that you'd ideally want to be in. But the important thing here is you are actually still making sure that despite what's happening, you are making good decisions about that asset, because it's not a decision about, oh, let's just get me in. This is a roof over your head. It's going to play a long-term role in not only your lifestyle, but hopefully at some stage in your ongoing property portfolio. So we certainly wish you all the best with that, Tina.
Tina's a tip there is, again, coming back to some of those episodes we did about tactics and strategy in a FOMO market. There's some really good stuff there. So if you feel like you're just showing up like everybody else is, you need to develop some other tactics around getting your offer potentially unconditional, doing your legwork before you go in there, making your offer attractive to the vendor without too many terms and conditions. They are good examples of how you need to separate yourself from the pack, because at that $750 price point, you're in that incentive area, stamp duty savings area as well. So you are going to be under competition. So keep showing up and keep trying to work on learning about some of these ideas around tactics and strategies, because that could just give you the edge to get the job done.
Yeah, go and look at that buying in a hot market series. But also first home buyers, another good tip, and you've sort of reminded me, Ben, is first home buyers do not like to move quickly. It's overwhelming. There's a sensory overload. There's lots going on. So going to lots of auctions, getting yourself immersed in the market, living on the sold tab of the real estate portals, realestate.com and Domain, because the sold tab's going to actually give you lots of information about what people are paying, so that you are in a position that you can move quickly. So that's really, really important. Hey, can you give us a like or share it with someone who you think needs to see this, or give us a comment on whether or not this is resonating with you for FOMO? But we've got some more questions here.
Look at all those love singles. Thank you very much, everyone. That's cool.
AJ Haddon-Smith, watching from Queensland, have both books, working my way through the podcast from episode 1, currently up to 275, and signed up to the Start and Build course last night. Thanks for the great knowledge. AJ, two things. Thanks for trusting us with your education. And two, it's a good point you make, because if you're trying to read the book and you're trying to read both books and you're trying to catch up on the podcast, there's a fair bit of investment. And to be honest, there's some people in our community who have done 2 laps and 3 laps of the podcast, and we're forever grateful that that's sinking in for them. But for other people who are time poor, that's a challenge, right? So that's why Start and Build can help, because if you just sort of click on the link that'll be on the screen shortly, you'll be able to see that we've condensed the bigger picture down to about 12 hours. And then within there's a case study for how to create 1,000 a week, 2,000 a week, and 3,000 a week passive incomes. You can be a fly on the wall looking over Ben's shoulder as he actually shows you all the inputs that he does throughout each and every one of those case studies. So you can start to think, well, okay, this guy's the property investment advisor of the year back in 14 and 15, and our company is the advisory of the year in 18 and 19. So you get to see a lot of that wisdom and see exactly the thinking and the inputs and the ideas that Ben is going through as he's creating those case studies.
Not just me, mate. Not just me. It's not a one-man show here.
Well, in those case studies in particular.
Yeah, well, definitely in the case studies. But I think also, if I've read the Armchair Guide, there is nothing better than, like, you know, when you're reading something and you're having a thought, and it's all solidified in the course. Like it is literally like being validation, revalidation, or, you know, making that position in your mind solidified in terms of a strong belief in terms of what happens with the property market. So I think that's important for me. You know, over 30,000 of the books or whatever that have been sold, if you haven't put the course with that, I'm thinking that's exactly how you freshen up, sharpen, iron sharpens iron. That's a great way of being able to do that if you've already got the book as well.
So if Ivis can help me here, and we'll just quickly go here on the paper. So there's really a couple of ways that we can serve our community, or there's 3 in particular, right? So there's do it yourself, there's do it with you, and do it for you. So our podcast, our books, all those help here with the podcast and the books. So you can go and read them at your leisure, you can listen at your leisure, and then go and implement it. The do it with you is for us is the Start and Build, because it's actually us going through. It's exactly the same format as this. We are drawing and scribbling out all of the ideas so that you can follow along. It's like sort of that back of napkin approach. And then the done for you, you know, we created a business some 13, 14 years ago where we help people who are in a position where they want it done for them. So we are able to offer our community a way to serve them where you're at. And if you are just at that place where you've done some of the do-it-yourself stuff and you need that do-it-with you, this might be a good option for you. So certainly encourage you to click on the link and go and check that out.
Well, I was just going to say, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of podcast information out there. We condense that down into 15 hours where we sharpen it to the points of takeaways. Really strong takeaways, consistently working through those modules to get to those takeaways. So if you are time poor, but you don't want to be taken advantage of, or you don't want to miss out, then I would recommend that you would look at the Start and Build course.
Exactly. Let's go through a couple of quick ones, Ben, before we work towards wrapping this up. But we've got Emily Galang. I live in a growth corridor near Geelong. I love the area to live in. I've just built my first investment property, which cost well below what I could sell it, thanks to land purchase well before title for today. and the rent is positively geared. I love this strategy, but know that it isn't what many investors recommend as they advocate for older areas. What's your philosophy? Emily, that's a really good question that you ask. It's around having a new estate. You are in a rising tide market, so that is going to look after you very, very well, as you have described. But what is interesting is we do talk about established areas, established properties, and you will find that given what yours has performed, it'd be interesting to go and see if you could get one maybe a bit closer in that has actually been previously built and compare those, because that might actually help you understand the difference. But my sister-in-law has actually just bought around the growth corridor in Geelong.
Yep.
It's gone up in value based on the price that she paid for the land. She's about to build it. So in a market like this, a rising tide lifts all ships. But what we're actually talking about is growth through all markets, through rising markets, equilibrium markets. And in sometimes during your career, there's going to be markets where it's very, very soft and comes off a little bit. But super excited for you, Emily. That's amazing. Anything you want to add there, Ben?
Oh, it's just that, the land values are more susceptible in those particular locations. So that's why we try and traditionally, avoid those areas where there is vacant land, because that ultimately will impact the value of that property. So today, most people are having wins when it comes to land appreciation and in terms of the overall capital appreciation in property. We are trying to teach people about how to buy properties not only in moving markets, but also in flat or steady markets as well.
Good question here from Evan. When you say 1,000 people have completed the course, can you explain it's only just launched? We are launching it this week at a reduced price, which we do once a year, sometimes twice, but we haven't decided. So we're doing it at a reduced price. So the launch is referring to a price that isn't available.
You can buy it year round at a certain price, and we're giving basically we're on sale.
We're on sale.
Is that the best way to put it? We're on sale.
But we did launch it last year also, which is where the students come through. So great question there, Evan. Thanks for clearing that up with us. We certainly enjoy the feedback we get here. I'm just making sure I've covered off most of these here. Ben, I think we have. There's the last one there. Cameron, not any one strategy is right for everyone, and just because you use one approach to start with doesn't mean you can pivot later. There you go, we're getting some community feedback as well. So, last thing I want to talk about before we wind this up, folks, is we talked about the top 3 FOMO mistakes, which are all in our free report, top 10 FOMO mistakes that property investors make. You can even go in here and see one of the biggest mistakes that Ben made. Got his real life story here.
$500,000 and growing.
So we've got our team who have put this together, which is basically some amazing content that you and I have been riffing off, Ben, and then presented it in such a great way, and you can get access to that for free. So we want to encourage you to either go to thepropertycouch.com.au/FOMO. You can see a hyperlink on the screen now, or you can click in the comments, we'll have it there, but we certainly want to get this into your hands. And of course, for those of you that want to go through the do it with you way for Ben and I and the Property Couch to serve you, we'd certainly encourage you to go to thepropertycouch.com.au/start and build, so you can get access to that course. But any final thoughts on FOMO, Ben?
Well, again, take the FOMO out of it. If now's the right time, get educated and execute, right? Clarify, evaluate, plan, implement, manage. Real simple. If it's not, you'll know because you're educated. So by, both ways, you come out with a good outcome, and that is to not make a mistake or to execute and potentially see yourself on that property ladder. And that's exactly where we want you to be. We want to see financial transformation. That's what the crusade we're on in terms of helping people build wealthier tomorrows and create financial peace. So good luck with it all. But if you want to take some of the luck out of it, get educated.
Yeah, well said, Ben. Bit of wisdom there from Ben. So folks, we have a podcast that comes out every Thursday. This Thursday is going to be no different. So we hope you've enjoyed the top 3 FOMO mistakes, and we'd love for you to check out our podcast this Thursday that comes out at 3 p.m. So check it out, thepropertycouch.com.au.